Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Dustin Friesenon. I'm one of the co-founders of Formative Loop. Thanks very much for taking the time today to learn a little bit more about the program and how to successfully run it on your campus. In this presentation, what we'll do is give you a quick introduction to Formative Loop. If you're not familiar with the program, we'll talk a little bit about the background for where it came from, and what the methodology is designed to do. And then we'll spend the majority of the time talking about how to get started and use the program on a day-to-day basis, as well as some best practices along the way. Thanks very much. So let's go ahead and get going. Now, if you're not familiar with Formative Loop, the high-level overview is that every day your students are going to complete a 5-minute math practice, really focused on foundational skills. Now, the students are going to do those practices with pencil and paper exercises that the teacher typically uses to start their math day. Then you use the Formative Loop website to assess their efforts and make a decision about each one of those students and the individual skills that they're working on and whether they should pass forward or retry that skill again the next day. And so the website is really used for managing the program. The students never go on the website. The website's only used by the teachers. Now, before we go any deeper, I thought you would like to learn a little bit about where Formative Loop came from. This is a picture of an elementary school in Austin, Texas. It's a large urban school, 800 students. The majority of those students are economically disadvantaged. And what's very interesting about the school is if you step inside and look at their data, you'll see that their math passing rates, here in the state of Texas, it was the tax test back in the early 2000s, were really down in the 60%. And then there was a huge jump in the year 2008. What happened there was a principal came in. He previously was an engineer. When he started his career in education, what he noticed is that skills gaps, especially with mathematics, were really holding his students back. So he implemented a program where every student had to really master each of these foundational skills. And while he was doing that program, he saw tremendous success with his math scores, jumping up into the 90s and really high 90s for the last, several years. So, that school now is an exemplary school. They've won many awards. They're National Blue Ribbon School in 2012. They've seen a lot of success. And so what we found was that running a program like that could benefit from some technology that made it really easy for schools to do on a daily basis. So Formative Loop was founded by two technologists who happened to be married to two teachers back in the year 2013 here in Austin. And we designed the product around what that school had seen to help replicate the success. Now, we've been doubling our participating schools each year. One thing I'm very proud of is 98% of the schools come back year to year. And that's because it's easy to run this program, and you'll immediately see a lot of improvement with your students with their math confidence and math skills. So the program, one thing that it's really focused on is, these foundational math skills. We really believe that higher level problem solving, you really got to have a solid foundation. Now, it's not just fact fluency, it's also things like place value, rounding, all of these basic skills are what we try to make sure each of your students get really good at. And what we're really doing is providing them a daily practice, but we're providing you, the educators, very targeted gap identification. So you're going to find exactly where to spend your instructional time and on these skills gaps to actually help those students overcome them. So we really see it kind of sits underneath what you're doing in your math class every day. This quick practice is a way to really get a lot of data to go highly target the intervention time that you spend with your students and what you're going to be teaching them in small groups and things like that. So the process is pretty straightforward. Most math teachers, they begin their math day with this 5-minute practice. The students are all going to be working at their own pace. So each student's going to have a different exercise based on where they're at in the program. Then teachers will collect those up, and they use the Formative Loop website, and I'll show you just how to do that, to go assess their progress and print out a packet of the exercises for the next day. Those packets are just a PDF file that you print out, and you're ready to go for the next day. Now, we support grades 1 through 8, and really this is a very quick and easy thing to get going on your campus. We find it's 5 minutes in class. If you're doing the administration correctly, it should take you about 4 to 7 minutes to do the grading and assessment for the next day. Couple other things to keep in mind is we actually have optional homework. I'll show you how to include optional homework. You can send home individualized homework for practice and parent involvement. We also have some incentive programs with award certificates and points. And we see students actually get really engaged in these programs and excited about doing it on a daily basis. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and jump into the website and show you how to get going. So the first thing that I will do, and I found it's very useful to just show you what the day-to-day feels like for a teacher. So when you log into Formative Loop, this is the website that you'll see, and you'll come in here and find your classroom. So I'm going to go and look at a second grade classroom here, Mrs. Jameson. And now imagine that Mrs. Jameson's been running this program on a daily basis. A lot of teachers, they'll start their math day with this, with the 5-minute exercise as their warm-up. I have one teacher, she does math right after recess, and she has the papers laid down on each of the students' desk. They go get a drink of water, they sit down, and they start their 5-minute exercise. The intent is that these exercises are, around 5 minutes. Some teachers are more strict around exactly the amount of time, but they're designed to show fluency and mastery of the skill. So the teacher would have picked up the exercises for the day, and then she's going to go and manage and start getting ready for tomorrow. So she clicks Start Grading. And here, what you're going to see is the answer key for each of the students. So imagine in front of you, you've got this packet of papers that your students have completed. And then on the screen, what you'll see is the answer key. So Julian here is working on addition facts. I'd look at his work in front of me, and I'd compare it to the answer key, and I would just quickly spot check to see how Julian did. And if it looks like Julian did a pretty good job, I'm going to choose whether he passes forward. So he wouldn't do adding eights anymore. He'd move on to the next skill. If he really was struggling with a skill, I'd say retry. In this case, I'll go ahead and click pass. And now the next student comes up. Now, the way you'll do this is the student exercises, and I'll show you these packet of worksheets in just a minute. They've got a number in front of them. And so you'll see the number next to Alejandro is 2. So I'd find the second one in my packet. I'd check how Alejandro is doing. And the first thing I'm just going to do is look for completion. You'll see that we have a little star on the page on problem number 9. So that's how far we expect typical students to get. And if they get that far, you would pass them ahead. If not, you would say retry. So in this case, I'm going to tell Alejandro to retry this again. Now, a couple of other best practices while you're thinking about grading is really some teachers will spend too much time checking every single problem. And that's not the point of this. This is a daily practice. This is not where you're going to give them a grade of 75% or 78%. You're really just saying pass them forward or retry. So what we recommend is you start by finding that mastery star. You see, did the student get far enough on the page to get to that mastery star? If they did, then you'll do a quick spot check for accuracy. And what you're going to do, some teachers, what they'll do is they'll do every other line, but you don't want to be spending a lot of time getting very, very fine-grained about your accuracy check. Now, the last thing to notice is if a student is really stuck on a problem, you can skip that student forward. And what that will do is mark it in the system as something that you skipped. Sometimes the student's just not developmentally ready, and you need to do some other activities with them to get them going in the program. And so that's what the skip button is here on the grading screen. So in this case here, I've got Jessica. I'm going to have her retry that skill one more time, and I'll just work through my classroom here. You can see, again, every student's going to be on a different level based on where they're at and their progress in the program. And it's very quick to go through a whole classroom. So now, when I'm done, one thing that you'll notice is we highlight students that have had to retry a skill 3 times or more. And this is very, very important because a student, at the end of the day, this is a practice. At some point, if they're not making it through this practice, they need extra help. So anytime you see a student retrying a skill more than 3 times, it's very important that you spend some extra time with that student and go do some extra work with them. You got to have some teaching exercises with that student to help them get over that skill gap. So we highlight these in a number of places to help you know which of the students that are stuck and what are some of the additional resources that you can go do to help that student. Now, when you're ready for tomorrow, you're simply going to download the PDF that has the next day's exercises. And that's what this button here that says Get Next Set of Exercises does. You'll see two options for homework. You can say, yeah, I want a individualized homework for everybody. Or I can include homework for just the people who had to retry a skill. Some schools do homework every day. Some schools choose to just do it a couple times a week, but it's a real great way for the parents to stay involved. The kids show up to school the next day ready to go because they've already previewed what they're going to be getting the next day. I've even seen some schools use that homework for small group time where it's not a timed exercise. They're just working with the student on them. So I click Get Next Set of Exercises. What that'll do is download my PDF over here. And when I open that PDF, you'll see what the packet looks like for the students. And at the top here, you see the teacher's name. And here I've got the student's name. That's that number I talked about. And you'll notice that, of course, each student has got their exercise is different, right, based on where they're at in the program. So, Alejandro here is on computing sums. So I go to my third student, Jessica. She's working on subtraction tens, and you kind of get the idea. I'm just going to print this out, and I'm ready to go for the next day. So, one thing that's really nice, it's got the kid's name up here. I know a lot of teachers say that just saves a ton of time, especially in some of the earlier grade levels, because the students automatically know which one is theirs, and they're ready to go for the next day. Now, one thing you'll notice is we also include award certificates. So if a student has completed a major unit, when you print out that PDF, you're going to notice that there's some award certificates that show up in there. And the kids get super excited about these. We recommend you find, a good forum to present those where they can really get recognition. There's another thing that you'll notice that we're going to be doing throughout the program, which is called the Formative Loop Points Program. And what we do is we award points every time a student makes an attempt, and we give you 5 points for an attempt. When they do a skill that they've passed forward, they get 10 points. And then if they pass a mixed assessment, which you'll see in the fact units, we start with an assessment that goes across all of the different factors at the beginning. If they pass that mixed assessment, they get 20 points. So this is a way for you to have the students really engaged in making progress. You'll see that points total showing up on their exercise sheets. And what you can do is say, look, when you get 25 points, there's a small reward where you can get a sticker or something like that. But maybe they trade in 100 points to get a larger reward, which can be something like a trip to the treasure box. And this is how you really get the students engaged in the program. They're going to be asking you to run this program on a daily basis, which is what you really want to see. One thing you'll see on the website is there's a template. Some teachers print out we call them formative loopers. They're a little currency certificate where the students can kind of keep track of how many points they have by having these little bills that you can print out. That's optional. That's up to you if you're interested in doing that. You'll see a link to it on the website. All right, I'm going to go back to the demo. One second here to find it. There it is. Okay. So whenever you're looking at your class, I wanted to talk about this screen a little bit. And this tells you sort of the progress within the program, so you can kind of understand how we track progress in the program. So when you first log in, you'll see all the classes within the school, and you go find your class, in this case, Mrs. Jameson. And the way that this screen works is each of these little squares represents one of the skills in our program. So you see adding threes, adding fours, and then down the left-hand side here are the students in that classroom. So, as the students progress, you'll see Julian is here. He's a little bit farther behind Alejandro. Jessica's even farther out. So these students are going to quickly end up in different places based on their progress within the program. Now, if I click on a student, like I'll click on Julian, this page is a great page that you can use for parent-teacher conferences. It shows you which of the units have been passed and how many attempts it took and their progress. and it's a good way to just show how individual students are doing. In fact, if you click on any of these exercises, it'll download another PDF of that particular skill. If you want to send them with any extra help, that's one way to get access to those. Now I'll go back to the class overview here. One thing to be aware of is when you start the program, you're going to start everybody at the same place. But if you need to move students around, you might find because you got a student who was more advanced, or you did some extra things in the classroom where one of these units you didn't need to run. All you do is click on a skill, and you can very easily set a student ahead or behind. You can even move your whole class ahead or behind. So it just makes it very easy to make changes to the program based on other things that might be happening in your classroom. Now, if you have students who start later in the year, you'll certainly, when you add a student to your classroom, you might need to jump them ahead, and you use that same ability where you just click on a skill, set that student there, and they'd be ready to go. Now, a couple of other best practices that I wanted to share with you. When you're starting out, one of the choices that you're going to be making is who runs the program on a daily basis. The most common way that we see schools doing this is where the classroom teacher, as they start math, hands out the exercises, and then near the end of the day, they spend a few minutes where they go and assess the efforts and print out the next day's and get ready for the next day's practice. Now, some schools, because anybody can really do that grading process, you can imagine it has the answer key. You can, with a little bit of training, show anybody in your campus, paraprofessionals, helpers, a math specialist, all of those folks could do this task for a whole grade level. So what we see is some schools, when the teacher is done with their practice, they'll put the papers outside their door. Somebody goes by and picks them up. They do it in a central place for the whole grade level where they go through and grade each one of them. And then they print out the next day's exercises and they put them in the teacher's box for the next morning. Now, what's amazing about this is it means you get to run a daily program with almost no impact on your teachers. So if you have those resources in your campus, it's a really great way to manage the program with very little impact on your teachers. So something to consider. Now, another best practice I wanted to talk about is if you have special education students. The first thing that I would say is let them use any assistant. So if they have like a counting chart or things like that, they should be able to use those same assistants whenever they're doing their daily practice. What's nice about the practice being on paper is it's very easy for you to customize the program. So, if you need to, you can cut the sheet in half for a student who really should only do half the problems of another student. You can even just draw a circle around the problems that you want that student to complete. Now, if it's necessary and you truly have students who are below grade level, one thing that I'll show is when you're creating a class, you can just create two classes for that teacher. The ones that are on grade level be in their regular grade. You'd create another group of students which are below grade level, and that teacher would just have two groups of students that they go and manage on a daily basis. So you can do that for students who are below grade level. You can also do that for any gifted students who might be above grade level. So your first day in getting started is very easy, and I'll walk you through a little bit of this. You just need to upload your class lists. There's two ways to do that. You can just type in the names or upload from Excel. You're going to find the button that says Add Classrooms. Your second step is to add any of the teachers or graders. All you need is really their email address. When they get added, they'll get a welcome email that teaches them how to use the program. And once you've got your class lists and your teachers and graders, you just hit go. You just hit print on your first day's exercises. Now, most schools, they try to begin grades 2 through 8 on the very first day of school because there's just not that many days in the school year whenever you get down to it. So we really try to get teachers to get going as soon as possible within the school year. First grade is a little different. Most first graders aren't quite developmentally ready on the first day of school. We commonly see the third month of school being their starting point. But that's really up to your students and their abilities. You might start a little earlier, you might start a little bit later, depending on how they're doing. We still do recommend all students start at the beginning of the sequence. So each of our sequences is customized for the grade level between first grade and 8th grade. But it includes a little bit of a spiral back. So third grade has some second grade work at the beginning. and it helps to individualize students. The ones who are advanced are going to move very quickly ahead. The other ones will get that spiral review as they're getting started. So to get started and add your classes, when you first log in, you'll see these buttons at the top of the screen. And this is the button to add the classroom. And you have two options. You can just paste in first name, last name of the student and the grade. If you do have an Excel spreadsheet, which most student information systems can export an Excel spreadsheet, you just click this button here that says Go Upload Spreadsheet. It'll describe to you the format and some samples of what that Excel spreadsheet needs to look like. You can upload your entire school in one go and very easily be ready to go. If you need to make changes when you're looking at a classroom, so I'll go back here, I'm going to find Mrs. Jameson. In here, I can very easily add a new student. I can remove a student, or, as students move between classes, sometimes that happens. You click Move Student, and you're able to manage it that way as well. So making changes throughout the year, very easy to do. Because the students aren't logging in to the program, it's pretty easy to add new ones and get them going. One last thing that I would show you is we even show the school progress. So if I click here on Show School Progress, what you're going to find is we show each classroom and the percentage of students that are passing that skill within that classroom. So this will just, this is the whole grade level and all the classes within that grade level. And then you can see the different skills across the top here and see how that class is progressing. So you'll find throughout the program, there's a number of different ways where we're trying to show you how your students are doing and really help you identify the areas that might need extra help. Okay. Let's go back to the presentation. I just had one last thing to share with you, is that at the end of the day, the most important best practice is this program, if you're not using it multiple times a week, you won't see the value. So it's important to get that practice in. Any skill, if it's music, if it's learning anything like painting, sports, practice is how you get better, and math is no different. And so that's something to really talk about with your students, is that what this is doing is building up their muscle so that they get really automatic with these basic foundational skills, so that when they're doing more complicated problems, their brain isn't spending time ticking away trying to figure out the basics. So we really think 4 to 5 days a week is what is required to really see success. My second point is the one I talked about earlier, where, if you're really grading for accuracy, a lot of teachers are really hung up on getting to the exact score. Is it a 75% or not with with each of the exercises? And if you're doing that, you're probably going to spend too much time and you won't be getting the value out of that time. So we recommend you're looking for spot check for accuracy. If you see a student is completing it, you'll get almost the same results. The other thing that I would say is, the worst thing that you can do is hand the same exercise out to a student over and over again. So if they're getting stuck, you really need to pause and go work with that student and make a decision about, what's the extra things that I can do to help get that student past that skill. And finally, the last thing is, the incentive program. If you build, it's very easy and simple to have incentives that don't necessarily even have to cost any money. Like you can do incentives like line leader for the day, or pick the book that we're going to read. Those types of incentives are very exciting for the students. And whenever I see teachers doing that using the points program and our certificates, you really will find that your students are asking you to do their math practice every day. And that's an amazing thing to see. So I hope that this has been helpful for you. If you need additional help, whenever you're looking at our website, there's a little help menu that'll show you some of these best practices and some of the videos that will dive into the topics that I covered. You can reach out to me directly. My email address is dustin@formativeloop.com. You can also give us a call if you're having issues. And someone will help you out whenever you get them on the line. So thank you very much, and I hope you have a good rest of your afternoon.